Priscilla Presley thought she knew every shadow in Elvis's world. But one night backstage in Las Vegas, she caught him holding hands with another woman. The crowd outside roared for their king. Yet what unfolded behind that curtain would shatter illusions, test love, and shock the world. Las Vegas, August 1970. The strip glowed with endless neon, buzzing like an electric dream. Inside the Hilton showroom, nearly 2,000 people crowded into the red velvet seats. The air smelled of perfume and cigarettes. Fans clutched ticket stubs that already felt like holy relics. On stage, Elvis was untouchable. His white jumpsuit shimmered under the lights, every movement sharp, every song like a prayer. When he sang Suspicious Minds, the crowd rose to its feet, voices trembling, hands reaching for scarves that would never be theirs. It was history alive, beating through amplifiers. Backstage, a different scene waited. The narrow hallway behind the curtain was quiet, lined with stagehands and whispered conversations. Priscilla stood in that corridor, her gown catching the dull light. To the world, she was the queen beside the king. To herself, she was just a young woman waiting for her husband to come off stage. Jerry Schilling, one of Elvis's closest friends, passed her with a nod. He saw her smile, calm and patient, but no one guessed the storm that would soon break. Elvis was pouring every ounce into the crowd outside, but something far more fragile was about to unfold in the shadows. Every cheer shook the walls. The sound was thunder, unstoppable, almost holy. Yet Priscilla felt something colder pressing against her chest. Was love enough to survive the weight of a man shared by millions? Could a marriage stand when the crowd demanded pieces of his soul every night? When the last note hit, the ovation rolled like a wave, spilling into every corner of the hotel. Elvis bowed, threw his scarf into the screaming mass, and disappeared behind the curtain. For the audience, it was another victory. For Priscilla, the night had only begun. Something unseen was waiting around that corner. The curtain had barely fallen when Priscilla stepped forward. The noise from the crowd still pulsed through the walls, rattling the mirrors and metal frames. But in the quiet stretch of hallway, her world froze. Elvis was not alone. He stood with a young brunette dancer, one of the Hilton's chorus line. Their hands touched, fingers curled together, not as strangers, but as if a secret had been carried too long. Elvis's face was calm, almost tender. The girl's eyes lowered, as though she knew she should not be there. Priscilla's breath caught. It wasn't the hand itself, it was the look, that small, intimate signal that spoke louder than words. A whisper shared in silence, a connection that did not belong to her. The shouts of "Encore" echoed outside, but backstage nothing moved. Jerry Schilling had just passed by, unaware of what was unfolding behind him. Only Priscilla saw. Only she felt the sharp cut of betrayal, swift as broken glass. She wanted to speak, to shout, to call him by name, but no sound left her lips. Instead, she stood frozen in the hallway, every second stretching longer than the last. Was this a fleeting moment? A gesture born of kindness? Or was it proof that the life she held onto was already slipping away? Her mind raced. She thought of the headlines that would never tell this story. The fans who would never see this image. To them, Elvis was pure devotion, their king of song and heart. But here, in the shadows, she had seen something they would never believe. The brunette pulled her hand away quickly when she spotted Priscilla. Elvis turned, eyes catching hers. His smile faltered. For a heartbeat, even the sound of the audience outside seemed to vanish. The silence between them was unbearable. Priscilla's hand trembled against the silk of her gown. How much could a single glance reveal? How many secrets can love survive before it breaks? She turned without a word. But in that pause, before footsteps echoed down the corridor, Elvis understood that everything had changed. The audience outside never knew. They clapped for an encore, feet stamping, voices rising in chants of "Elvis! Elvis!" The Hilton showroom shook with devotion. Yet in the corridor behind the curtain, Priscilla's silence burned louder than the roar of 2,000 strangers. Jerry Schilling saw her pass by, face pale. He knew better than to ask. Joe Esposito, ever watchful, caught Elvis's uneasy glance and moved closer, as though shielding his friend from questions that could not be answered. The entourage exchanged looks, whispers darting like sparks in dry grass. Elvis forced himself back onto the stage for one more song, microphone trembling in his hand. The spotlight blinded him, but he could feel Priscilla's absence like a weight in his chest. Every lyric of Can't Help Falling in Love carried an edge of strain, the crowd mistaking his tight voice for raw emotion. Backstage, Priscilla lingered in the dressing room hallway, listening as the ovation swelled again. Her heart was caught between love and humiliation. How many times had she waited patiently for him? How many nights had she been the one constant while the world demanded every piece of him? The fans screamed louder, begging for scarves, reaching for fragments of his being. But Priscilla no longer felt part of that worship. To them, Elvis was eternal. To her, Elvis was suddenly a man who could choose someone else. Joe Esposito whispered to another aide, "Don't let this get out." He knew the press needed only a flicker of scandal to turn flame into inferno. Yet how long could such things be hidden? Secrets don't stay in corridors. They travel. They multiply. The tension rippled outward. A stagehand noticed Priscilla's trembling hand. A dancer saw her leave the hallway quickly. Rumor is a living creature. It breathes, it feeds. That night, whispers grew legs, chasing through the Hilton long after the lights dimmed. Elvis bowed again, sweat dripping, tossing another scarf to desperate hands. The cheers sounded endless, but inside he felt the wall building, a silence stronger than applause. Would Priscilla confront him here, or would she hold her pain until the curtain fell for good? Something was about to ignite. The final bow ended just past midnight. The Hilton showroom was still vibrating with applause when Elvis slipped off stage, his jumpsuit damp with sweat, hair clinging to his forehead. The air backstage smelled of hairspray and hot lights. He carried a scarf in one hand, as though clinging to the last trace of safety. But Priscilla was waiting. The hallway seemed narrower now, its walls pressing close. Elvis caught sight of her at the far end. Still, silent, her figure framed by the dull glow of a vanity bulb. For a moment, he thought she might turn away, but she didn't. When he stepped into the dressing room, the door closed behind them with a soft thud. The noise of the crowd outside was muffled now, like thunder heard from underwater. Priscilla's voice was quiet, steady. Why her hand, not mine? The question landed heavier than any shout. Elvis's breath slowed. His scarf slipped from his fingers onto the floor. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Seconds stretched. The silence was unbearable. Elvis tried to reach for her arm. She stepped back. His hand hovered in the air, caught between apology and denial. "It wasn't what you think," he whispered, his voice rough from the stage. But Priscilla didn't need explanation. She had seen the truth in that look, that touch. "Do you know what it feels like," she asked, "to watch thousands scream your name and realize you don't even hold on to mine?" Her words cut deeper than anger. They carried sorrow. They carried love tested too many times. Elvis's chest tightened. For all his power under the spotlight, here he felt small. "Scylla," he said softly, "I get lost out there. The crowd, it fills me, but it empties me too. I hold on to whatever's near." Priscilla's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. She stood taller, regal even in heartbreak. "Then maybe you've forgotten who's nearest." Short bursts now. His eyes lowered. The scarf lay crumpled at his feet. Neither moved to pick it up. Outside, fans still chanted his name. Inside, his marriage hung in the balance, delicate as glass. Would the king answer with truth? Or would silence claim them both? The air in the dressing room was still heavy. Elvis leaned against the vanity, his reflection fractured in the lights. Priscilla stood only a few feet away, but the distance felt like a canyon. She could have screamed. She could have walked out. Instead, something else happened. Her eyes softened. Tears finally spilled, not of rage but of sorrow. They slid down her cheeks without sound. Elvis froze at the sight. He had braced for anger. He wasn't ready for compassion. She whispered, "I don't hate you, Elvis. I pity you. You're surrounded by thousands. Yet you fear being alone. That's why you hold on to anyone's hand. But it isn't strength, it's fear. Elvis's chest tightened. No audience had ever disarmed him like this. On stage, he commanded armies of voices. Here, he was just a man exposed by the woman who knew him best. The brunette dancer had slipped away long before, leaving nothing but a shadow of her presence. Now there was only the two of them, the king and the woman who carried the cost of his crown. Elvis lowered his head. He muttered, "Scylla, I don't know how to stop. I give them all of me, and when the lights fade, I don't know who I am." Priscilla touched his hand, not to claim it, but to remind him. "You're more than the stage, but if you forget that, we're already lost." Her words were not a demand. They were a lifeline. In that fragile moment, something shifted. For once, Elvis didn't hide behind charm or excuse. He let the truth settle, raw and unpolished. Outside, the crowd had dispersed into the casino floors, clutching scarves and ticket stubs as if they were holy. But in that quiet room, a different kind of history was being written. Compassion had replaced fury. Yet compassion is not the same as forgiveness. It is a bridge, not the destination. Could that bridge hold? Or would it collapse under the weight of everything left unsaid? The Hilton showroom emptied into the early hours. Fans carried scarves like trophies, humming the melodies as if they had seen perfection. But backstage, a different story lingered, one that would never appear on souvenir programs. By morning, whispers spread. A maid swore she saw Priscilla leave the suite in silence. A stagehand told another dancer about her face in the hallway. Rumors are quick creatures. They do not wait for truth. Within days, the Vegas Sun ran a quiet headline, "Storm behind the spotlight." Nothing was confirmed, but everything was implied. For a public that wanted their king flawless, these stories only sharpened curiosity. Jerry Schilling kept quiet. Joe Esposito shielded Elvis as best he could, calling it just talk. But silence only made the whispers louder. Fan clubs argued endlessly. Was it real or just another invention of the press? Decades later, Priscilla herself would speak of the strain of living in Elvis's shadow. In interviews, her words were measured, but her eyes carried the memory of what it felt like to love someone who belonged to millions. A bootleg tape from that night still circulates. You can hear the power in Elvis's voice, but if you listen closely, some fans say, you hear the crack in his heart. Whether true or not, the myth has lived longer than the marriage. Time polished the night into legend. A plaque outside the Hilton, placed years later, speaks only of sold-out shows and roaring crowds. But the truth of that backstage storm rests in softer places. Priscilla's silence, Elvis's lowered eyes, and a scarf left crumpled on the floor. How much of history is fact, and how much is memory shaped by what we want to believe? What shocked the world was never just Elvis's hand in another's. It was the reminder that even the strongest love can bend under the weight of fame. Priscilla had glimpsed the truth behind the rhinestones, her husband's fear of being alone, and the cost of being shared with millions. The Hilton crowd went home believing they had witnessed perfection. They did not see the silence in the corridor, the tears in a dressing room, or the compassion that stopped anger from breaking into fire. Legends are built on stages, but marriages are tested in the shadows. Years later, fans still argued about that night. Some claimed it was just gossip. Others swore it was the beginning of the end. The truth rests somewhere between memory and myth. What we know is that a single moment can shift the course of a life. The king belonged to his people, but Priscilla's pain reminded the world that even legends bleed, and even love can be stretched until it breaks. If you had been there, what would you have chosen? To forgive or to walk away? If this story moved you, share it with someone who has ever carried the weight of loving someone larger than life. Were you or someone you know ever at the Las Vegas Hilton shows? Tell us your memory, and if you want more untold Elvis stories, stay with us for the next legend.